For this course, we're actually going to be using kind of a virtual lab. Since we're going to be using a lot of different tools and techniques to access machines, to hack into them, if you will, we're going to need a lab. We're not going to do this on actual production machines or servers or computers that people actually use. That's a very bad idea, by the way. You only want to use these tools and techniques in a controlled environment, basically for learning, until you become a certified ethical hacker and you're able to actively engage in professional hacking as a business with the right permissions and so forth, and we'll talk about those later. So, for our purposes during this course, we're going to set up a virtual lab. So, I'm going to tell you how I'm setting mine up, and you can go ahead and set up yours as well. And occasionally, I'll give you some tips and tricks on some different variations that I'm using. First of all, I probably won't be setting up all machines at once. Very rarely will we be using several virtual machines and operating systems at the same time. You may turn one on and use it, or turn another one on to attack another machine, and so forth. So we're using virtual machine technology to set up our network, our victim machines, our attacker boxes, and so forth. If you have the resources, for example, if you're on a closed network or you have enough physical machines, then by all means go ahead and set up a lab like that. If you like, that's up to you. Now, as I said, we won't have all of our virtual machines running at the same time. We'll use them as appropriate during the course. And you'll be able to set up your lab and change it however you need to practice on different tools and techniques. At some points we'll be using Windows boxes, sometimes we'll be using Linux boxes, both for attacker and for victim computers. So at a minimum, we're going to use a Windows Server 2012 virtual machine, a Windows Server 2008 virtual machine, Windows 7, possibly even Windows XP to demonstrate some other older concepts, and we'll be using Backtrack or Kali Linux, whichever one you prefer. Both of them are current versions of some of the best hacker tools out there from offensive security, and both are used widely by penetration testers and ethical hackers. So you could use Backtrack or Kali depending upon what your preference is. Now, if you need to download Windows operating systems, of course we want you to use legally licensed copies of Windows, but you can use the trial versions. And typically they're good for 180 days or however long they are until they expire. So you would download these directly from Microsoft. You can also download Backtrack or Kali Linux directly from Offensive Security, and that requires no license or payment or anything like that. So those are your basic virtual machine images, and you can set those up any way you like. I would prefer that you network them together so they can see each other on a virtual network, and you can use some tools from your host computer, but primarily would like for you to use tools that are on your virtual machines themselves. So that's our lab and how we're going to conduct the course with it. And I'll give you more details as we go along about the network setup, the IP address space, and so forth, because some of it will change depending upon the tools and techniques we're using throughout the course.